Welcome back to the Transform podcast. We're here to teach you about ways to transform your life, your health, your wealth, and your relationships. Today, we have a new friend to the podcast, Patrick. So, Patrick, thank you for having me here in your home. I certainly appreciate it. Please tell me a little bit about yourself. Who's Patrick?
Who's Patrick? That's a loaded question. My background is in science, and really, actually, when I was a kid, I really loved communications. I really loved everything around communicating with people, with communicating messages, with really using my voice, right?
Great.
But then in fact, in college, when you go to college, they give you the book where you can look at all the classes that you need to take in order to graduate on a certain track. So I went to college in a mass communications track,
Major.
right?
Okay.
But the first semester in, I saw that book and I saw all of the classes I would have to take each semester for 4 years. And I saw all of the Englishes I had to take. Not only the 101 or whatever, 404 advanced Englishes, and I hated English as a kid. I have a hearing loss. I was always, I don't know what that has to do with retaining information from books, but whenever I was given a reading assignment in school, and then we would have to come in and the teachers would ask us questions on what we read.
Right.
I actually would read. For the first part of my schooling, I would actually read it and do the homework. But they didn't believe that I read it because I couldn't answer the questions that they were asking, right?
Got it.
So they didn't believe me. So then I just stopped reading. So I developed a negative relationship with reading, with English altogether. And so I said, hell no. It took only one semester. I said, there's no way I'm taking all these Englishes, so I'm not going to do mass communications. So give me the track that has the least amount of Englishes.
Wow.
And that was math and science, but I chose math just for that reason. And I did that for a couple years on a math track, which is very similar to the science track for the first 2 years.
Right.
Then I realized, okay, I don't really want to do numbers the rest of my life either, so then I switched to chemistry, which was a little more fun, and I was okay with it. And I didn't have to take any Englishes beyond the basic freshman Englishes.
Right. You still have to do a lot of reading, though, because science, as any other sciences,
You do have to do a lot
what
of
I
reading.
understand, you read a lot, and
You
you
do.
have to absorb a lot of information.
Yes, it's technical reading. It's a little bit
Right.
different. But yes, you're right. So I still had to do reading. And to this day, I don't read very often at all. People are always recommending books. I very rarely ever read the books because I just don't enjoy reading. However, you can do Audible now. I do
Yeah,
Audible. But I used to do choose your own adventure books as a kid. And I used to not give a shit about the actual adventure, but pick the option that would lead to death the fastest.
Oh, for
so
real?
that the book would end. So like you can fight the bear, or you can go back into your cabin and call the police or whatever. I would say fight the bear. That's where I want to go because I want the path that's going to lead to the end of this book
Right.
the fastest.
Well, that's an interesting perspective.
And even in college, I would just do the cliff notes. I'm like, just give me the cliff notes. Give me the cliff notes. Like if you recommend a book to me, I will ask you, just give me the cliff notes. But so it was just a negative relationship that I was conditioned to develop. So I ended up in the sciences, and I ended up going to school for a long time. Ended up doing a PhD from Georgia Tech,
Wow.
which I don't have any regrets about. I had great experiences through the journey. But I do wonder, like, what if I hadn't developed that negative relationship with English or the arts or mass communications or whatnot? What if I had just led into that voice? I wanted to be on the radio. I was told because of my accent I couldn't be on the radio.
And you had an accent from where? Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
You have an accent too, but
Right.
But who cares?
Who cares? That doesn't
Yeah, well,
really
I didn't
matter.
live in Miami. I lived in South Louisiana.
Oh, that's why.
It's in New
the
Orleans. Yeah.
southern little
Yeah,
accent.
southern
Okay.
accent.
How did that play a part in your life? Did it ever play a part, the fact that you had an accent?
It never bothered me.
Did it bother other people?
I don't know that it bothered other people. It was just there were a lot of judgments,
Got it.
right? So it's like The Waterboy. Have you seen The Waterboy?
I haven't. I'm not gonna lie to you, I haven't.
But you have preconceived notions about the South and about Cajun country and Cajun people, right? And so we don't always sound the most intelligent, right?
Oh, that's such a pity that people...
So yeah, so you're judged based on the sound of your voice, right?
Yeah, I faced a little bit of that. But in
So-
reality, it doesn't mean that you're not intelligent at
No,
all.
it
That's
doesn't
just
matter. It
a
makes no
big
difference.
misconception. So,
But it took me 45 years to discover that. So,
Okay.
hey, I'm 45, I'm here now. And
never too late, man. Never
Yeah,
too late.
yeah.
Although life took you this way, right? This route, did you ever pursue that passion of public speaking, doing engagement, something like that? Did you ever do something in that area?
yes, I hired a couple of speaking coaches,
Uh-huh.
and I thought, I want to speak. But then I recognized I had to really evaluate why I want to speak. Because I recognize there's all kinds of people out there who want to speak. There's all kinds of people out there who want to write books, who want to speak, who want to be on a stage, who want to be everyone just wants to be recognized and appreciated for what they do, right? But I recognized I didn't really want to speak. I just wanted to be recognized, right? So I sort of stopped. I can speak. I enjoy speaking to the right audience, but I discovered the real reason for wanting to speak was more about me than about them. And so that's when I kind of said, okay, so that's not the right reason for me. I don't want to speak for me.
So maybe that's where I want to get to. Mm-hmm. Why did you want to have a voice? What message did you want people to hear?
So that message is really based around the ability to recognize what exists within ourselves, right?
Okay.
For so many years, through every course, whether it's childhood, whether it's the English thing that I told you about, whether it's as a kid, I mean, you're a guy, you know, I mean, most boys, at least in the U.S., most boys grow up wanting to be a professional athlete. My son right now wants to be a professional football player. He's like, I want to play high school football, I want to play college football, I want to play professional football. So I always wanted to play professional basketball. That was my thing. I remember in high school, I had a rubber band. Do you know if you take a rubber band and you stretch it out, and you write a message on the rubber band, and then you let it go back to its original size, you can't read what it says. You can only read it if you stretch it out, right? So I was in high school, and I had a rubber band. It was like about this thickness right here, so you could write on it. And so I stretched it out and I wrote on it, and I wrote NBA All-Star, right? But then when you contract it, I could walk around with it and not be embarrassed or anything like that because it was high school. I could just walk around with a rubber band on my hand. Until one day, this kid named Matt, I don't even remember what class it was, but this kid named Matt, he somehow got the rubber band. I don't know how it happened. I don't remember that, but I do remember he got the rubber band and he stretched it out. And I don't know if he thought there was some writing on it, but he stretched it out and he read it. And I was so embarrassed. And then he started making fun of me for what is this? Blah, 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 right?
Making fun of you for having a dream? Wow.
So
how did that affect you though? If it did?
Well, I still remember it 40 years later, right?
True.
I would like to say it didn't affect me, but I definitely remember it. And it was really the beginning of really learning that nobody was going to believe in me unless and until I believed in myself, right? And so every step of the way, there were examples like that where I wasn't enough or where people weren't going to believe in me, right? Yeah, even when I was 40 years old, right? It really wasn't until I started believing in myself that stopped mattering, and that other people started believing in me. Yeah. I started noticing that, wait a minute, now other people believe in me. Or maybe I'm just like so cuckoo in the head that I think that people believe in me, but it doesn't really matter. It only matters what I think they think. It doesn't actually matter what they think, right?
I think that what happened to you, whenever it happened, whether it was at 40 or whenever you mentioned, I think everybody goes through that at some point in their lives where the opinion of other people sometimes could matter more than your own opinion. Yeah. But then their opinion is based on your own opinion of yourself. So how would somebody believe in you if you don't believe in yourself?
Yeah, of course. Exactly.
So went through that not too long ago in 2020. Maybe mention that story a little later. But yeah, I went through an employment separation. I worked for the same company for about a decade, and all of a sudden I find myself in the middle of the pandemic out of a job. But it wasn't out of a job. It was out of my identity, right? I wasn't Alexander Doda. I was a banker at this place, and nothing else seemed to click when I wasn't part of that place anymore. So I'm like, who the hell I am? You know, like I lost all identity. I was depressed. I was, upset. I didn't know which direction to take. So I could definitely relate to the fact that it's very important to define who you are for you, rather than allowing anything external to come and say, this is who you are. Oh, no, it's like, hold on. No, I am who I am, and that's my core belief. And then whatever you want to say, whatever your influence is, doesn't really matter to me because I already know who I am and where I come from. It's interesting that you share that. I appreciate that you took me back to that place.
I would say that when it comes to, because you mentioned something that kind of triggers me a little bit when you talk about depression, because when it comes to, and I would say the people that I can relate to the most are not the people who have suffered through depression, the people who have had near-death experiences, the people who have been alcoholics and overcome alcoholism, even though I had my journey with alcohol and drank enough between the age of 20 and the age of 40 to last me the rest of my life, and I was dependent on alcohol, no doubt. But I didn't identify as an alcoholic. I just really enjoyed it, and I was addicted to it, but it wasn't. I was very functioning. It wasn't. I never went to AA or anything like that. But the point is, when I started my turnaround, I actually beat myself up for not having suffered through that thing, that major event, that depression state. You see all these. I'm always. I don't know if impressed is the right word, but I'm always very impressed by people, and it's very inspirational, right? People who have overcome depression or alcoholism or drug addiction or near-death experiences to rise from that, from the ashes, so to speak, to lose everything and rise up, right? It's very inspiring.
It is, I agree with that.
But it never happened to me. I never lost everything. So I beat myself up for you know, who am I? Why would anybody want to hear my voice? Because I never lost everything. I never went through depression. I never went through these you know, deep, dark times. I had my own dark times, relatively speaking. But I have nothing on people who have overcome all these terrible conditions. And
But I'm sure that doesn't make your story any less difficult.
I've come to learn that.
Believe that. It doesn't make it any less difficult than somebody that went through those struggles. So I'm going to go there for sure. I want to dive deeper on that, but I want to take you further back because I want to learn more about you. You told me about your schooling and what you wanted to become, but talk to me about you growing up, you as a child. If you feel comfortable, right?
You ask me anything.
Parenting, siblings, you know, more school struggles. Give me a little bit more meat. Who's Patrick?
We were always teased for being like the Brady Bunch because I had two parents who were ridiculously happy and together. They're still married today. They're still not only married, they're happy, like they're 47 years and actually still walk down the street holding hands every day.
Awesome.
Right? So it was like that when we were kids. We just thought that was normal. But we slowly started to realize this isn't normal. We're the weird ones. Like, everybody's divorced, or even if they have parents that are married, they're just married and they're like they don't get along very well.
Right.
And I had two brothers. I didn't have any sisters, so it was pretty competitive. We were a competitive environment, and I was deathly afraid of girls. Like, you know,
I could relate to that.
Didn't want anything to do with girls. I didn't even know what a tampon was until I was like a senior in high school. I had no idea. And so then I'd get made fun of by the guys. Like, what? You don't know what this is?
Yeah.
I didn't have sisters like most of them did. So I told you I have a hearing loss. So when I was in 4th grade, this is another reason that explains why I went to math. Because when I was in 4th grade, I don't know if you have ever had music class, but like you have to sing do, re, mi, so, fa, la, right?
Like the vocal cord spectrum or whatever.
Yeah. And I was at a Catholic school, so most of the teachers were nuns. And her name was Sister Cecilia. And she's dead today, but if she was alive, I would have reached out to her and like to have a conversation with her. Not to tell her anything bad, just to speak with her.
Right.
But she would, now this was I was in 4th grade, so this was back in about 1988 or something, right? Different times. And but she would spray me with a water bottle. She had one of these water bottle spray things and slap me with a yardstick, right?
What?
She would have a big old yardstick, and she would come and slap me and spray me, because she thought that I was mocking her and mocking the class because my do, re, mi, so didn't sound very good. Didn't sound like everybody else.
Hearing issue.
Yeah, because of hearing. So she thought that I was making fun of her. So she would give me detention every day. And my mom was a teacher at that school. My mom taught kindergarten. Because my mom was a teacher, we didn't go home till like a half hour after everybody else. We didn't go with normal dismissal because she had to stay after school anyway. So anyway, she gave me detention. I would have to go into her office, which was like a little shotgun-style office, really skinny, and there was a piano in the corner. She would sit me down at the piano. I didn't have to play piano or do music, but I would do my multiplication tables. I couldn't go home anyway. I just did my multiplication tables, so I didn't have to do them at home. So I could play when I got home, right?
Right.
Well, what that did was, this is another person that I would reach out to if she was still alive. My 4th grade math teacher was named Miss Shimento. She loved me because I did all of my multiplication tables. I was the first one to finish all the multiplication tables. She loved me. She would literally tell the rest of the class, why can't you be more like Patrick? He's always the first one to turn in his multiplication. She was always praising me. She praised me so much, I could do whatever I wanted in that class. In fact, one day, I walked to the back of the classroom, I was playing with a pencil sharpener, and I electrocuted myself.
What?
Because I could do whatever the fuck I wanted. I was in 4th grade. Do whatever you want. All the other kids are sitting down, and she would let me do anything I wanted. So I learned to, how would I not love math? I was praised by this math teacher. I was told how dumb I was by this music teacher.
No.
So the arts, music, English, everything that was associated with the arts, I was just turned away from. And that was how I went towards math. And Miss Shimento, I'll never forget her. She would praise me like no tomorrow.
That's you make me remember something else, a lasting impact of people caring, right?
Yeah.
That not only changed in a way, had something to do with the course that life took you. This caring teacher in math and this horrible experience with the other person that never cared to find out why you maybe couldn't do the notes and stuff like that. So it's interesting how that plays out. So then let me take you now to what do you do for work? What's your profession, your passions?
It's always like when you go to, my middle brother is an accountant. He said, if you want to like stop the communication at the Christmas party, just tell him you're an accountant. And there will be no more conversation. What do you say to that? Like, okay.
Yeah, crunch numbers for a living.
Yeah,
right?
It's not very exciting. It's not going to lead to a lot of conversation, right? But I'm the opposite. I mean, I could tell you about whatever you want to hear about. I could tell you about my nonprofit. I could tell you about my oil and gas business. I could tell you about my health coaching journey. I could tell you about the children's book series that I'm working on.
So share with me. Tell me what you want for the audience to listen to.
I'm a strong believer in the power of our diets. But when I say diets, I'm not thinking about diet in the way that society uses the word diet, right? I'm talking about a diet in terms of consumption of what goes in through our eyes, what are we watching, what goes in through our ears, what are we listening to, what goes in, of course, through our mouth and what we're eating, and then what goes in through the way we're breathing, right? All of what we see, what we hear, what we smell, the way that we breathe, the way that we eat makes up everything that we consume, right? And that ultimately creates who we are. Whether you could say it's our habits and rituals, but what we see, what we hear, what we eat, I mean, those are our habits.
I agree with all that stuff. I agree with that. But what are you doing with that information? Are you doing anything special to share that information with the world? Are you developing some? You mentioned a couple of coaching programs. Are you working on some of that? Do you mind sharing what your passions are today?
So I'm very passionate about helping the people who want to be helped. Right?
Okay. What do you mean by that?
I can't force anyone to be mindful of what they see, what they hear, what they eat, right? But if they're interested in evaluating their habits and rituals and evaluating and feeling better, right? Okay. Ultimately is what it comes down to. The greatest example I like to use is my parents, my dad's 77, my mom's 74, and about 5 years ago, my mom was on blood pressure medication and cholesterol medication, and my dad was starting to gain weight, and they just weren't feeling great.
Right.
My mom was always asking me, like, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel that way, right? And I said, look, if you're open to it, I can take you on a journey, and we can fix all of this. She's like, all right, we'll do whatever you say.
Wow.
And I was really proud of them because, I mean, most people in their 60s, they're set in their ways, 70s, they're set in their ways, they're not changing.
Right.
My dad was 72, my mom was 68. But they changed. They walk 5 miles a day every day. They eat whatever they want, whenever they want. I'm a strong believer in not restricting yourself. And so they learned how to eat. They eat real food. They eat food that serves them, food that makes them feel good. My mom tells me almost every day that she feels like she's 50 years old.
Wow.
And she's 74. They run around with the grandkids. They play with the grandkids. We're going to the beach next week. They'll be just as active and just as energized as the grandkids are who are in their teens. And that's something that my parents dedicated their lives to their kids. And now they dedicate their lives to their grandkids. That's just the way they're wired. And that's all they wanted, was to be able to pour into their grandkids. Now they can do that. They feel amazing doing that. And it's really rubbed off on the entire family.
No, I could see that change they get more energy, they could do more stuff. So hence
Yeah.
the family could be together for longer.
People always say that time is the most valuable asset. Time is our most valuable
I
asset.
said that, so I wanted to touch on that today, but yeah.
Bullshit.
Give it to me.
Bullshit.
What is it?
So what happens if you have to go to the hospital right now, and you have to get your kidney taken
I
removed?
see your point. It's not time, it's
Energy.
health. Energy.
Yeah, it's energy. It's how much energy you have. If you're bedridden, you can't get out of bed because you're too tired or too sick, too whatever. It doesn't matter how much time you have. You have the same amount of time as me, right?
That's true.
Energy is what will dictate the quality of your life.
Man, I could agree to that. 100%. Thank you for changing my perspective.
Now you will never say that time is our most valuable asset ever again.
I'm completely on board with you.
There are people who argue it, but
No, it's because you make a very valid point. What is it to be living 100 years old if you've been in a coma, right, for 20 years? But what if you live 20 years in complete health and you make it the best 20 years that anybody has lived? How do you measure? So that's a great point. That's a great point. Awesome. Yeah. So it sounds like your passion, it's in, I'm going to call it a spiritual awareness plus health.
That's great. Yeah, I agree with that.
Tell me where that passion started.
Where it started, it's really from my own journey, right? From my own experience not being enough, right? My own experience of seeking for external validation. My own experience of just like, I think one of the things was as a kid. I played sports.
Okay.
My dad would always come to my games. My mom too, but I never felt like he cared what happened during the game. I didn't care. I never felt like he cared if I scored 1 point or 50 points. I never felt like he cared if I did well, it didn't matter, because he always harped on the concept around if you had fun, that's all that matters, right? So I never felt like he believed in me, right?
So you needed that push.
I wanted that push. In fact, I had a conversation with my dad not too long ago, and I said, I asked him, why didn't you push me? Like I just wanted you to push me because I didn't ever felt like you cared, right?
Wow.
But of course, that was I don't know how many kids believe in themselves, right? That was certainly a time in my life as a teenager where I was seeking for external validation. I didn't believe in myself. And he was a great guy, great dad, like super supportive. Like, there's the other extreme too, where you push your kids too hard.
I'll tell you about that right now.
Yeah.
My experience was the opposite of your experience. I had parents that provided everything that a child needs to, right? The comforts of life, a good house, PlayStation if you wanted one. Yeah. When that came up, right? I'm not too old.
Yeah, did you have a Tecmo Bowl? Nintendo Tecmo?
I had a Nintendo. How do they call it? DS, all that stuff. Well,
you're young. You didn't have the original Nintendo?
No, I didn't.
With Tecmo Ball?
No.
Super Tecmo Ball? No. Oh, man.
91. I'm on 1991, boy. I had all these comforts that everybody in a third world country, right? I come from Cuba, so everybody there would look at me and be like, oh, this kid has good shoes and like a good backpack. He's got like a TV at home, and he could play video games. And then whenever he goes out, he has money to spend. But then my parents, growing up, I was the male in the family, right? In Hispanic cultures, like men, they have a representation of men that sometimes is illogical. Mm-hmm. You gotta be like the king of the household. And I have my little sister, so everything she did was like, they would care for her, they would give her a lot of attention. But to me, you're the guy, you do your stuff, and whatever you do, you gotta be the best at it. But whatever you do is never enough. So if you're the best at math, you score 99, you could have scored a 100. Mm. So they would discount all the work. So I had the complete opposite experience. I had parents that maybe did not care, but at the same time cared too much about the accomplishment. So I felt growing up like I was never enough, simply because I could never outcompete myself.
Yeah, that's true.
I always had room for improvement. I always had to, an obstacle to overcome. I always had to get better. So the opposite perspective. So that tells you that your frame of reference, the way that you interpret the world, it's the way that you decide to live your life.
Of course.
You saw it, like you had caring and lovely parents that just wanted you to do what you enjoyed regardless of the outcome. And then I have parents that only care for the outcome. and I felt like they didn't care about me the same way.
It's just you're traumatized either way. That's I mean,
How funny is that, right?
I've come to learn that. I've come to learn that no matter what we do as parents, kids are going to be traumatized because if you care too much, if you don't care enough, there's always a different way to do it. So with my own kids, I try to be the balance. Yeah. I'm certainly not
push and pull, right? Like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, but we oftentimes what we do is we either do it because our parents did it or do it because our parents didn't do it.
So yeah, it's a massive conflict. Then it takes me to a pivotal point. I understand now why this was a passion for you. You were telling me before that you reached that critical mass point where you had to make significant change for yourself. When did that happen? What happened at that point? What led you to it?
It was really, so I got married when I was 29. The relationship was full of judgment and criticism, right? I was always being judged.
Define judgment for me, really quick.
Well, judged for everything. Like, you didn't wash your hands. You didn't put the garbage out right, or you didn't fold the clothes, or you didn't do this, or I remember one time that I actually put my wife's, I was washing clothes, trying to help out washing clothes.
Right.
And she had her bikini in the washing machine, and I was transferring everything from the washing machine to the dryer. I put all the clothes in the dryer, and when everything came, I was proud of. I thought I helped out. I was, proud of myself. Not because I was able to do the laundry, but because I thought I was helpful.
Right.
She was so pissed because her bathing suit shrunk. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna buy another one.
Yeah.
No, you are not buying another. I just spent $100 on this bathing suit, and I treat myself to one bathing suit a year, right? You are not spending another $100 on a bathing suit. I'm like, but this one doesn't work, and I'll make it up to you. I'll just buy the. I was like, so how do I win here? Like, she wouldn't wear the bathing suit because it had shrunken. I couldn't do any more laundry, and I failed because I put her thing in the dryer, and I couldn't even make it up to her by buying another bathing suit.
So message to my wife, I'm not the only person that messes up laundry.
So her bathing suit shrunk, and she basically forbid me from ever touching the laundry ever again, which was then when I realized, ooh, this is how you get out of stuff.
Doing the stuff, right?
Do it wrong.
Yeah.
And then I never had to do it again. So I never had to do laundry anymore after that. And then I learned that, oh, okay, well, I'm going to get criticized no matter what. I'm going to be, wrong no matter what. So let me just, yeah. And so obviously it's a negative outlook, but the relationship turned out to be fairly, it wasn't horrible. I mean, none of us were addicts in any way, but it wasn't very serving. Okay. And I wasn't happy, and I realized the example I was setting for my kids was, quite frankly, not the example I wanted to be setting. But it was perfect from a standpoint of, being married to somebody who makes, a couple $100,000 a year. It was very comfortable. Right. Took off all the pressure. I could do what I wanted.
Took all of the financial pressure.
Yeah.
But you still had the relationship pressure.
Of course. I could have stayed. I could have stayed and stayed with the comfort financially. But it wasn't. It just I needed to show my kids another way. I needed to show my kids more. It was taking away from what I could contribute as a dad. People oftentimes talk about staying for the kids. I wanted to. You can stay for the kids. It's fine. Like, I'm not judging whoever, whatever. You stay for the kids, but I wanted. Okay, how can I become the best dad I can be for my own kids?
Right.
And ultimately, staying wasn't that pathway.
Right.
That pathway was through leaving, and so I left, and here I am. So that was a big part of my journey. I've been divorced now for about 18 months, and it was a real.
So was that the pivotal point that led you to self-discovery?
Yeah, it kind of started. It kind of started like a year before that point. But okay. Yes, when I recognized that the relationship was over, when I recognized that I had a choice. I could either leave and work on me. And become the best dad I can be, the best person I can be, and accomplish what I want to accomplish, or I can stay and just, kind of give up, kind of throw in the towel.
Yeah, right away.
Once I made the decision, I didn't just get divorced right away. It took me some time to build up to the courage because that was not an easy decision.
How hard was that? I personally never gone through that. My parents did get divorced, but in a third world country, it's just like I'm gonna live in a different house, and that's all it takes. But I know here it's like it's the legality, all the issues.
Yeah.
Was that difficult to your mindset, to your obviously economic situation?
Oh
all that
yeah,
stuff?
mindset. I mean, every day you end up with questions like, "Oh, should I have stayed?" You know, like, look how easy it was. You had it friggin' made, and then of course you have society, and you have friends in your ear, or people in your ear saying, "Are you stupid?" Like people would kill to be told they could have a wife that makes $200,000 a year.
Right.
Like,
I see
I mean, that's what people see,
Yeah.
right? People don't see what happens behind closed doors. They don't see the emotional distress, the
Right.
mental impact. They
Yeah.
see.
the fancy car.
Yeah, you can have a wife that makes $200,000 a year. Fuck, sign me up for that. I don't care what she does. She does not beating me. She's not an alcoholic. She's not a drug addict. Well, she wasn't any of those things. Yeah, the easy thing is to stay, and then you get constant reminders. Just society, life throws constant reminders at you that maybe I should have stayed, right? And it's kind of from a negative mindset standpoint. That's really it's really a dangerous place to be,
Yeah.
because it can be tempting to throw in a towel. It's easier to throw in a towel.
It is easier. It is. That's usually the easy way out. It's easy to scream when you're upset. It's easy to kick a wall or something when you're pissed off. It's easy to project what you're feeling like you were a child, because that's the easy thing to do. Let yourself go and let your emotions run.
Yeah.
The hard thing is just to have that degree of control, emotional control, to say, I'm bigger than the situation, and I control what happens next.
Yeah, that's the key, right? The hard thing is I control what happens. The hard thing is I am responsible for my life.
Right.
I can look within. I can really dive into myself to figure out, how can I improve my life? How can I improve my situation? And that's really, that's the biggest thing for me, was once I was able to recognize my contribution, instead of you can just live blaming other people. You can blame other people all day.
Victim card, right?
Yeah, and it's easy to blame other people. It's really easy to find somebody who did something wrong, whether it's the person who cut you off in traffic, or whatever the example is, the person who cursed you out, or stole something from you, right? But it's like, what can I do? What can I do? Every situation, everything in life, I've come to learn, is an opportunity for us to look within. If we get triggered, if somebody pisses us off, if we get angry, it's like, okay, what am I angry about? What am I really angry about? I don't even know that person who cut me off in traffic. Like, why am I angry at that person who cut me off in traffic? I don't know anything. They could have a pregnant wife in the car. They could have just received a phone call that their mom got a heart attack, and they're rushing to the hospital or rushing to their house to try and help. Who knows what they're cutting me off in traffic because they are in a rush, because they don't even know me. They're not doing it to me, but yet not anymore, but I used to be the biggest one, the first one to flip somebody off or scream like, "Why, what the fuck?" Like, you cut me off. Like, but really, if you step back and think about it, like, what am I angry about? Because they don't even know me.
That's powerful.
And if you think about it from, like, what did they go through today? What have they,
Right.
Right? Empathy, right?
Yeah.
Which I wasn't always the most empathetic person, I can tell you that right now.
I could relate to that as well, man. I could relate to that as well. But it happens as you grow.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So we're at the stage in your life where you realize that change needs to happen.
Yeah.
And then your situation, it's something that you want to reach transformation, right? You just want to change it up, spice it up, become the person you want to become. How do you go from separating from your relationship and embarking in that journey to getting it done? What happens in that gap?
So a big part that I didn't mention that happened right around that time of 42, I think it was 42, was my best friend passed away. He had a heart attack.
Sorry to hear that.
He had 3 kids and a wife, and they were high school sweethearts, and so that was a big part of when what really initiated the process. That was really when I really decided to look at my life and say, shit, like, and that was actually what started my LinkedIn journey.
We spoke a little bit about the misconceptions, and really appreciate that message. I'm gonna get back to you on it because I'm still confused.
Okay. Yeah.
Although I understand the fact that I have to be conscious enough to listen to my body that if I
Yes.
eat something and it makes me feel weird, why would I continue to eat it? That's the core message, right?
Do you have all the energy you want to have every day? Do you feel the way you want to feel every day? Do you feel like you have energy? Do you feel good? Do you feel happy? Do you feel mentally sharp? Do you feel focused? All of those questions.
Right.
if
And the answer to that, my honest answer will be not at all times. Not
Okay.
every day.
Yeah, okay.
You know, the large majority of the time I do feel like that, but not all the time.
So then the question would be, when you don't feel like that, if you can trace it back to what did you just eat, right?
Got
or
it.
what was it? Maybe it is the pizza. Who the hell knows, right?
Okay.
But it's being able to correlate, what the way that we feel to what we just ate. It's not always eating. It could be because we just watch porn. Right. It could. Remember, when I talk about consumption, I talk about what goes in through your body, through your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, all of it. Right.
Okay.
So I can't speak to what that thing is at that time. That's for you to listen to your body and figure out and be able to make the connection. Ah, okay, it's this. Every time I go see my mother-in-law, this is what happens, right? Or whatever the example is.
Right. Okay.
you ever-
That makes more sense. Thank you for clarifying.
If you ever need a story on mother-in-laws, I got some stories for you on that one.
I have, and this is not a lie. Let me preface that because I'm being recorded right now, and then people might think that I'm inclined to lie about my mother-in-law.
You're one of the lucky ones.
Dude, I have the loveliest
That's great.
mother-in-law ever. Her
great.
name in Spanish, her name in Spanish is the same thing as sweet in English.
It's great.
So her name is Dulce, and the lady is like as sweet as you could get. So,
That's great. Congratulations.
So I'm
You won the
lucky.
mother-in-law
I'm the
lottery.
lucky guy. Awesome, man. So talk to me a little bit about what's the best piece of advice that anyone has ever given you.
It's such a generalization, but I would say to the concept around detaching from the outcome.
Okay, elaborate on that for me.
So often in life we try to certain thing, do a certain job. We show up in life with the intention to complete that task, with the intention to get to another. We use things as a means to an end, right? Whether it's washing dishes, right? If I'm washing dishes to quickly get done with the dishes so that I can go make the kids lunch, or if I'm rushing through making the kids lunch so that I can go and get on LinkedIn, right? Then I'm missing out constantly, constantly missing out, right? So the outcome when I'm making the kids lunch, of course, is completing their lunches and getting their lunch boxes ready, right? But what if I detach from that, and what if I just pour love into making their lunch, and what if I just immerse myself into this is putting the rainbow in their lunch, or they'll like this or they'll like that, and just kind of making what they will enjoy and treating the experience that way.
Being more present.
Being more present, yeah. And when it comes to business, it's the same thing, right? So many times we need to get this task done. We got a deadline at work or whatever the case may be. But what if we just did it and didn't pay attention to so much to the outcome or to meeting that deadline, and we just tried to have as much fun as we could have in the process, and then the end result
could be so much better.
So much better, yeah.
That's quite interesting. I'm of that belief as well, that I like to pour myself into what I do, and I think that as a byproduct of doing that, things just flow better. My team runs better. Yeah. The people that I surround myself with are better, and hence my life is better by default. So I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, and I'm gonna pivot from that, right? In what you're doing right now. Obviously, there's a lot of negativity in the world, and it's easy to get absorbed, into the world, right? Because it's hitting you for every angle, whether that's the bad news or the ad in YouTube or the neighbor or the person, screaming at you with road rage. How do you manage to stay driven and motivated and continue to pursue, that person you want to become, and help other people doing that as well?
It becomes a lot easier when we're present. So it's related to the first answer or the last answer that we talked about. But I mean, my kids helped me a lot. Had I not had kids, I also wouldn't have had the inspiration to leave, right? Because I recognized the biggest thing that I recognized was I wanted to show them a better version of me.
Right.
And I knew what I wanted to show them, and I knew that wasn't it, right? Every morning when I wake up, the first thing immediately, before I even open my eyes, is I think about how I feel. And usually I feel amazing. Maybe every now and then it feels okay, I have a stomach ache, or I feel this, or I feel that, but I haven't been sick in 5 years.
Wow.
My kids haven't been sick in 5 years. We moved to Miami in 2019. They haven't been sick. None of us have ever had COVID. So it's really just a focus on, okay, the first question I ask myself is how I feel. The second question I ask myself is who or what do I appreciate that day, right? And I think in my life, what am I thankful for?
Gratitude.
Yeah.
Powerful message.
Yeah. Before I even open my eyes aren't even open yet, and I kind of run through that in my head. And then the third thing is really just to kind of recognize my breath and kind of just breathe and become one with my breath, really get in touch with my breath, feel the air coming in, feel the air going out. It doesn't take more than a few minutes. It's not something not some crazy routine or ritual, right?
Right.
But that's, I don't know. I know you asked, how do I stay inspired or how do I stay motivated? I'm not a fan of the word motivation. I prefer inspiration.
Okay.
Motivation, I feel like, is more temporary.
Right.
I feel like also motivation is maybe externally driven.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So
what I'm hearing is what inspires you is obviously feeling well.
Yeah.
Your family, all the things that you have to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And then just having control of your breathing and just your routine, having control of your own life.
Yeah.
Sounds about right?
Yeah, although control is an illusion, I've come to
No,
learn,
right. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's another hour. That's another hour conversation. This podcast is not only about business, but mainly personal development. So what I want you to do now, if you don't mind, is that if you could be a mentor to anybody in the audience, I want you to concentrate on them, and I want you to share with them a message, your message, that could help them transform their lives. So that's the whole purpose of the Transform podcast, to help them transform their life, their health, their wealth, or relationships. So by all means, thank you.
I would say that, we talk a lot about these buzzwords and these buzz phrases, and I call it word porn, when we talk about creating our life and manifesting our life and, taking inspiration, right? It's all word porn. Detaching from the outcome. It's all word porn, right? And so it's true. None of those things aren't true. But we get so wrapped up in the word porn of it that I feel like, and I know for me, it kept me for so long disinterested in personal growth, disinterested in personal development, because all the word porn sounded a little bit too Pollyannic. It sounded a little bit too, I don't know, almost Fantasia-like, and like they were speaking at me from above, right? And so for me, I guess the biggest piece of advice I would give is to really, when you hear this word porn, to ask questions. If somebody's speaking word porn to you, like to just dive in deeper, like to understand, what does that look like? What do you even mean by detach from the outcome, right? Instead of just hearing the words and taking the words at face value, to really ask the question, either externally or internally, to really evaluate, what does that mean and what would that look like in my life? And really, when we start looking, I think I said this earlier, but every single thing in life is an opportunity to look within. Everything that happens to us. And the more that we look within, the more answers we find. And every answer is within. It's not in a book. We think it's in a book.
Right.
We want a prescription. Everybody wants a prescription. I wanted a prescription for how many hours do I have to play basketball when I was a kid? How many hoops do I need to shoot? How many weights do I need to lift? How fast do I need to run? Whatever. All these, we all want to know. How do I get the job? How do I get the girl? How do I get the house? How do I get everything? The car. But there is no prescription in life. The only way is to just try something and see what happens, and then fail and learn from it.
Mess up, man. It's okay to mess up, man.
That's it. You don't want to mess up because you don't want to be embarrassed. Well, if you don't want to be embarrassed, you can give a shit about what other people think. The key is to detach from what other people think and just let yourself be embarrassed. I mean, that's great. In fact, if you're embarrassed, then the question is, okay, why am I embarrassed? What is it within me that feels embarrassed? That's a feeling, right? There's 17 levels of consciousness, and they all range from like the depths of depression all the way up to bliss and beyond bliss, right? And so wherever you are on that scale, it really just takes looking inside to just get a little bit higher and a little bit better. You don't need to go from depression to bliss overnight.
Right.
Just go from depression to finding somebody to be pissed off at, right? Being pissed off at somebody and angry is not necessarily a good place to be, but it's better than being in depression. It's better than being without any hope.
100%.
And feeling completely apathetic, right?
Yeah.
So find somebody, just find some, but society doesn't tell you that. Society tells you you're wrong if you blame somebody. You're wrong if you're angry. You're wrong if you want to beat somebody up, right? Allow those feelings, like allow them, process them, like feel them. That's the biggest thing I would say. It's maybe too long of an answer, but that's,
Awesome, brother. I really, really enjoy your perspective today. You actually make me, I'm going to take your advice away and I'm going to do a lot of self-reflection because you actually make me doubt a lot of my own preconceived notions. And,
it's dangerous.
And I think that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, it's dangerous, though, because the more you start to look within, the more answers you find. And look, your life's pretty good. You got things pretty good. Right? So why would you want to look within and potentially, stir the pot, right?
But that's contentment. It's where all the dreams die, right?
That's right. It's like a big pot and all the sediment is at the bottom, right? And if you got to stir it up, right, to get some of this, to get the filter and suck some of that stuff out, like, but it's so much easier to, you got all this clear space here.
All the clear water up there, right? Yeah. So awesome, dude. I hope you had a good time having a conversation with me.
Great talking to you.
Had a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.